Welcome to Innovation Alley. This episode features Hillsborough County, Florida's Assistant County Administrator, George Cassady, for a discussion on the innovative ways the county is responding to population growth and the challenges of keeping water safe and flowing in the aftermath of hurricanes.
Good morning and welcome to Innovation Alley. Today we are in lovely Tampa, Florida in Hillsborough County. We're going to talk about an interesting topic, how to deal with a massive utility development when you're growing exponentially. I've got George Cassady, Assistant County Administrator for Hillsborough County, and like I said, we're going to talk about the challenges of your job and maybe so many other things, because we got two Irish guys that can go off in a lot of different directions, right? By the way, I'm Tim O'Rourke, Chief Technical Officer at Wade Trim. I forgot to do that too. I think you had told me that you're adding like 22 to 25,000 people a year since 2020. Does that sound right, John?
Tim, it actually goes back farther than that.
Okay.
I mean, for probably the last 15 years, we've been growing at about a 4% rate. So that would average anywhere between 600 and 800 new meter sets per month.
Wow.
So it gets up there pretty quick, 9,000 meter sets per year on average. And so the growth rate has been significant.
So you're like, are you the fastest growing county in America? I think somebody had told me that.
There's a lot of statistics and demographics, and so we're always in that top 3 or 4 counties in the country with their growth rate.
Wow. Well, we're going to cover a lot of that when we get into our conversation today. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and how you evolved into this position? And you and I were talking a little bit about why we became engineers. I don't think we have to go all the way back to graduation day, but just tell a little bit about yourself.
I don't know. There's some good stories about graduation day, right?
That's a whole other podcast we're scheduling.
A whole other podcast. Yeah. So thank you. So yes, George Cassady. I'm been in practice in environmental engineering for 42 years. That has been between consulting engineering, private industry, and certainly public service. I've been in my current role for about 12 years now, Assistant County Administrator for Public Utilities. I have a umbrella of responsibilities. I've got water resources, which is our water, drinking water, wastewater, reclaimed water, then our solid waste collection and disposal, and our environmental services. So it's a pretty broad group providing really essential services to the citizens in the county.
And you know, as all those services you described, this new term that's out there, this one water concept, right? You guys have a one water concept program.
We do.
Because of how these all interact with each other. And Florida challenges are different than Michigan challenges, and but some of them are all similar, right? So why don't you talk about your One Water program in general, with this massive growth that's happening around it?
We are very engaged in our One Water program. And so this started probably about 10 or 12 years ago. And it's the reality that even though Florida is surrounded by water, there's not a lot of good quality drinking water to be had, or at least cheap drinking water. And that's the buzzword of the day. We can get our drinking water from a number of sources, but really we want to keep that price low. Yep. And manage that sustainability component of providing drinking water to our customer base. We don't want to continue to raise rates. And so the One Water was born out of the fact that we do have limited high quality drinking water sources. We want to manage what we've got very effectively. As we all know, there's going to be a day and time when either indirect potable reuse or direct potable reuse is going to be on our doorstep. Yep. And so if we're going to be providing or getting involved in a DPR option, direct potable reuse option, we need to make sure that all the steps of taking care of the water, we really got to shoulder into that. So our wastewater system, we want to make sure that we clean our wastewater up as much as possible. We want to prevent what goes into the wastewater system, right? And even our stormwater systems, because that's the One Water concept, all of the water becomes drinking water at some point in time.
Right. They don't. I mean, a storm water source doesn't know the difference between itself and wastewater.
It really doesn't.
It's all the same.
It really doesn't.
Cycle, and you can't just turn a switch on and make it all happen, right?
Right.
Because I know when we've talked about this with some other utility owners that sometimes regulatory drivers and community drivers were looking at silos for each of those things, and it wasn't integrated.
Really are.
And now it's moving in the right direction.
So Hillsborough County several years ago developed in its comprehensive plan one of the first one water elements in the country. And so we've combined.
I didn't know that.
It was exciting for our planning commission a couple of years ago.
I mean, who led that? Was that you?
Well, we all participated in it.
Okay.
I don't want to take total credit for it.
Come on,
there was there was some involvement to say, hey, look, we need to be mindful of not just the drinking water supply or our rivers or our surface water components, but also what happens to stormwater. Take care of stormwater because we're going to be drinking that one day as well. So they homogenized all of these different elements of the water environment for us and put it into one element of the comp plan.
You can see why, like in Florida, that would be a main driver way before, like, I grew up in Detroit, in Michigan.
Right.
What's around Michigan? The largest domestic water source on the planet, right? So a driver to look at it different than, I could always have a source regardless of what happens,
right.
Would be an understandable thing. But now I think everywhere is adopting it for the exact reasons that you just described. And I think being a leader in that is always good, right?
And you got to push forward on it, right? It's easy for us to do what we've always done. It's easy for us to fall back into the path of saying, this is what we've done, and we'll continue to do that because we're comfortable with it. And so the one water mentality is a push forward, to really embrace that change is around the corner. And we just need to adopt it and get on with it.
So you and I were talking a little bit about being in a growing program, right?
Right.
I had been a program manager for Cleveland in the sewer district, and they went from $50 million a year to $350 on a driver that was permit driven for combined sewer overflow management, amongst other things. But we used to say we got to change all these things we're doing while we're trying to get all these things done.
Right.
In a stressful environment, you're probably drinking out of a fire hose in this kind of environment on many days when you had a plan going in and then something changes, right? So why don't you tell me some of these growing pains that in the last 12 years as you guys have gone from here to there, and you've got a trajectory that's going to continue along that path, right?
Yeah. So
like you were telling me, we don't have the option not to do a project because of the growth drive.
That's right. When you said, what are you doing about the inflationary impacts? Do you defer projects? And we're not sitting in that seat. We don't have the luxury really of deferring projects because most of the project work that we're doing right now is adding capacity. And so we've got a growing community, we've got a growing customer base, and the challenges are not unique necessarily, but you've got a significant system that is a maintenance-driven system.
Right.
And you got a significant component that is new and expanding the capacity. When we had the last 5 years, starting in 2020, we saw a significant influx of residents from the Northeast, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, all of them coming down.
Snowbirds are coming.
Snowbird, well, and they came and they stayed, right?
Yeah,
so things were shutting down in the Northeast because of the the health concerns with the pandemic, and we ended up leapfrogging New York in population in 2021, 2022 because they all moved down to Florida.
I was in Manhattan when COVID hit and watched
firsthand
half of my building
leave,
pack up and go south.
And they came to Florida.
Yeah.
And so what that did to us, it put us behind in our planning and our implementation of expanded capacity. So all of our treatment facilities on the wastewater side are at that 75 to 80% capacity right now. And just because of the regulatory requirements, we are like on it to have plans to expand those facilities. And the One Water program includes a new 30 million gallon per day wastewater plant down in the south portion of the county, which also is located in the fastest growing portion of our county.
And what I find is so interesting when you're having this conversation is 'cause a lot of the communities that are in the older communities that have infrastructure renewal challenges, you can in theory delay one of those projects, right?
Correct.
Because it's still in service and it's deteriorating and it needs to be rehabbed, but you can't. These
really
people
can't.
are coming and I don't have the option not to service them. Right.
We have to provide the service. The way this the state and this county is built, we encourage development. We want development. We want that tax base to move in,
Certainly.
And we've got to have the services ready for them.
Yeah, I imagine it's kind of exciting too, right? As challenging and stressful as it is.
It's an adrenaline rush, really, right? Because you're racing against time to provide all the things that are necessary. And again, it goes beyond just water and wastewater service, guaranteeing when you go to that faucet, you turn that handle, something's going to come out of it.
Something's coming out.
And it's not just coming out, but it's good for you. It's clean, it's healthy, you can do whatever you want to do with it. So it's not just that, but it's also picking up the trash, right? You got to make sure you've got the resources and capabilities to continue to provide those services.
And as long as you're doing that, additional people want to come, right? I mean, it's building the value of the community.
Correct.
It's great. Yeah, I always, like I said, drinking out of a fire hose with stress and everyone's around. But you're in a growing, we got to get this done, we got to get it done fast. I think you're mentioning to me, if you had an issue about yourself, which is the same as me, is you're impatient, and we got to get done fast. And so how do you manage some of those challenges? Is, you know, like I told you, the pursuit of perfection is the enemy of good sometimes. You know, let's get it done. So what are some of the tactics you use and styles? And
I'll just say, you know, as we've talked, I come from a background, I'm very competitive, you know, and if I'm going to run the race, I'm going to win. I'm going to run the race to win.
To win it.
May not win it, but I'm going to run it as if I'm going to win. And I expect my team to push hard and achieve those kind of results. I think if you're pulling together and you can inspire the team to do great things like that, here you have an opportunity to do something that will set you apart. It provides a little inspiration. It provides a little motivation to everybody. You know, we've seen some significant economic challenges come our way the last couple of years. You know, the inflationary challenges with a project that cost $100 million last year or a couple of years ago is now $200 million. So it's really...
On top of you don't have the choice not to do it.
And on top of not... So then the challenge becomes, you're a bunch of smart folks, figure out how to do it. You know, that's where your innovation comes in.
It's how we're going to do it.
How we're going to do it. How we're going to make it happen, because we don't have the choice not to do it. So innovation is huge. I think engineers as a whole tend to be very conservative. They want to rely.
Oh, come on. No,
maybe a little. Little conservative nature, you know, risk averse. Want to make sure that path that we're traveling is a solid path. And I think the times are changing where we really need to embrace some of the innovation, some of the new technologies. I've said a number of times, I think there's been more innovation in the last 5 years than probably the last 40 years. Just with the advances of all the things that we know and the ability to tap into the databases.
You're speaking from my playbook, because I've been saying that, and when I do the chief technical officer go around, I'm literally in charge of innovation at Wade Trim. And you and I graduated about the same time.
Right.
I don't know if you were using punch cards and a computer when you're in college, but we didn't have laptops. I don't know if you did.
No,
I didn't.
There was no such thing as a laptop.
CAD wasn't even prominent then. And think of the innovations that have happened in our career.
Amazing.
And now we're trying to decide how AI is going to affect a useful tool, assistant, and augmenting our services, and how it's going to help, you know, utilities like yourself, right? It's incredible. So when you use the term innovation, what kind of innovation tactics has Hillsborough employed?
So my approach to innovation is, and we talked about this a little bit too, you know, our customers pay the bill. And if we throw more and more money at it, it just means that their bill's going up.
Right.
And so we have to be smart and have that sustainability, right? Are we going to grow our footprint, but yet not be burdensome to our customer in terms of the cost of the operation? So the cost of the operations are number one. We have to do things the right way. We have to be stewards of the environment. But at the end of the day, we got to manage our system so that we're just not arbitrarily increasing costs to our customers. That's fundamentally.
George, you've mentioned this like 3 or 4 times as we've been talking. Yeah. So you are a steward of the service to the community, right?
That's big.
Do you find, I've seen this in other areas, that people sometimes don't understand the difficulty that goes into providing clean, safe water, and they just expect it to be there, almost not free, but
we spoil our customers.
Yeah,
I'm going to go back to
whereas if your cable bill goes up or your whatever streaming service goes up, you just pay it. Right?
So there's like 2 or 3 life-sustaining services. That's your cable, right? Your electric, because you can't live without any of those things, right? And then your water bill. And if you compare,
literally can't live without water. You can live without
so obviously that's a little tongue-in-cheek. But if you compare those bills, your water bill pales in significance to your electric bill, or your cable bill possibly, or even your family plan on your cell phone.
Absolutely.
And who's going to be the first one to yell about $1 more, $1 2? It's going to be the ones with the water, right? Because there's a feeling with some that's a fundamental right to have clean water, and it should be cheap.
That's exactly where I was coming. And so and a lot of your job in some ways is to not a salesman per se, but to communicate to the community how important it is
what they're getting
to do what we're doing, because what they're getting at the end of the day is making their lives safer and better.
And so I've shared with my staff, and I've shared with people in different settings, there's a phone call that you don't want to get. And the phone call is Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock from the single parent with 2 kids telling you that they can't pay their bill and their water's going to be turned off.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reality. And so
Is that prominent in your...
We have a pretty significant percentage of fixed and low income customers. It's about 25%. So 1 out of 4.
Oh, that's significant.
Yeah, it's significant, right? And so I want my staff, I want my team to always be mindful that if you're doing something and costs are going up, it's impacting that single parent that's trying to pay the bills at the end of the month. And we just need to have that always in the forefront.
Looking at it through the eyes of that customer will drive your behavior a lot.
Wear their shoes. Put yourself in their shoes.
Perfect, yeah.
We got off track, though. We were talking about something else.
I don't know, he's got 2 Irish guys getting him.
I hijacked the conversation.
Yeah, this could be dangerous. I was telling everyone, you get 2 Irish guys that can embellish a little bit, maybe go off on a little bit of tangents, but we're making progress.
Okay.
So as you see in this growth, and you were talking a little bit about the impacts to the capital plan from inflation, but there's supply chain issues. The contractors are challenged with coming up with a confident price. We haven't talked about delivery method, but like I had a podcast show, you talk about collaborative deliveries. So what kind of tactics are you using to deal with that challenging environment? Like you said, you can't just say, I'm pushing these 2 jobs back.
So you
have to live within the capital plan you got and manage the cash flow accordingly so that you can make happen what is getting more and more challenging because of
and
these
you're
things.
spot on. So looking at the traditional delivery methods, we've transitioned past that. So now we're into alternative delivery.
Perfect.
We've looked at progressive design. We're looking at a CM at risk kind of model to achieve project delivery, and those are proving out to be very helpful. And not that it necessarily makes it any less expensive, but you're getting what you want at the end. My observation is that when you're working collaboratively with both the engineer designing your work and a contractor who's delivering it, they're working together and working together with us as the owner. We're ultimately getting what we want.
And you have a larger say in some cases.
We do,
right?
We do. We have a significant say in it.
And you're getting more real information about cost as decisions are being made, and it's
real-time information.
This is huge in Florida.
Yeah, it's big. It's big. So that's been real helpful. I think the days, even in the industry, I think the days of hard bid are just about done around here. The last couple times we've...
Why you say that? Just
contractors don't want to deal with it.
Okay.
Contractors would rather put their time into some kind of collaborative approach. And it's showing in the amount of responses that we're getting on a bid. If we advertise a bid, we maybe get 1 or we probably get 0. And so if that's going to be the result of a long effort of designing it and then putting it on the street, to try and get yourself a solid contractor, just go another route.
Right.
Don't fight that. But I know what I did. So we were talking about innovation. What are we doing for innovation?
Innovation Alley.
So
I forgot this is an innovation podcast.
So the innovation, how are we trying to do innovation? So one of the things to keep that cost down, again, is looking at elements of our program and our operations to say, what can we do that's going to be efficient and maybe drive the cost down? And we did something at a project several years ago where, by permit, we have to have standby generation, power generation.
Right.
So we got incoming utility electric, and all of our plants do. And so we've got standby generation. So our standby generators cost millions of dollars. They've got to be able to power up the whole plant and keep it running for however long that you need it. Well, the reality is those standby generators are not continuous duty. You can't keep running them. You run them for a short period of time, and then you shut them back down, and then you've got this big investment that's really tied up with not performing or not providing any value to you. I worked in private industry where we had a cogen plant, and I've always had in the back of my head that, hey, what if we make our own electricity? And so in the Northwest plant, when we were expanding that one, we went ahead and looked at, instead of putting a couple $1 million into standby generators, spent a little bit more money on a continuous duty turbine.
Wow.
And we did that. And so now...
Are they self-sustaining now? Or?
Self-sustaining, 100% self-sustaining.
Wow.
Yeah. So It goes down for maintenance once a year for a couple days or something like that, but it provides power. And one of the benefits has been the clean power aspect of the turbine generator. Power coming out, it's very clean. We haven't had analyzers are real touchy. You lose analyzers because of voltage swings. You lose analyzers because you get voltage spikes. So we don't have that problem anymore. Everything runs
sustainability and resiliency is front and center in what you're doing, right? I mean,
big time.
I mean, it has to be. I mean, you have to worry. There's areas of this country you got to worry about storms. You got something else going on, right? I mean, resiliency is a whole other game here. Yeah. So, to use innovation like that to become self-sufficient, does it work when you're getting hit with them? So, because the reason you're talking about power is it gets knocked out, right?
It's primary power, right? Because electric, we lost 75% of the grid when Hurricane Milton came through. 75%.
75%.
75%, and it was down anywhere between a couple days and 2 weeks, depending on where you were in the community and what the priorities were for our local utility to bring them back online. So it was a major hit. The plant that has the turbine never lost power, right? And it was powered up and it was operating. What we've got now for that is the typical standby generators that are on secondary duty.
Yeah.
And we did belt and suspenders, of course, so we've got electric utility as a third option if all those others fail.
To get back into the growth, that's incredible. I mean, just to think that you're that self-sufficient, could get hit with something like that. Mm-hmm. Thinking of your organization again with the growth model, I imagine you're adding capacity of delivery with people and engineers and operators, or tell me, I mean, as you're growing like that, there's another kind of challenge going on I think around the country to a certain degree. In succession, you've got some of these older a lot of people that are our age had gotten into our industry, had wanted to be operators, had wanted to deal with public works, right? Less so as the time went by, right?
Right.
Do you find a challenge as you're seeing some of this institutional knowledge want to retire, or do you have that problem?
I think everybody's got that problem.
Okay. How do you challenge? I mean, how do you deal with that?
Certainly in our generation, when we got into this, at least when I got into this, I joked that wastewater wasn't a destination location. It was just somewhere where you found yourself one day.
Yeah.
And so I think that is less of a statement today because people are more interested in the environment. They're more interested.
I think you're right. I think you're right. Yeah.
And so I think I see us bringing in young professionals that are passionate about the environment, and we're just plugging them in as best we can, and training them up as quickly as we can.
So you are a destination opportunity.
We are a destination location.
Do you have in the middle of the grid, like the 20, 30-year folks that are not yet retiring, or do you have a dearth there, or do you have a full?
So I'm one of the ones on the back end, right?
Yeah,
so I'm closer to the end than I am the beginning.
Right.
Then we do have a professionally speaking. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I'm the same.
My only regret is I don't have 20 more years to give to it. Just because
you look like you could do it if you wanted to do it.
It's been a lot of fun. I'm telling you, even though there's a stress component, even though there's a lot going on, and we have to manage a lot, and drinking from the fire hose, as you say, it's engaging, and it's really rewarding to be able to do what we do and provide the services that we provide. But in terms of our workforce, I saw something the other day that was a statistic, a demographic within our workforce. If we've got maybe there's 1,000 people.
Yeah, how many?
1,000 employees.
You got 1,000 employees.
Mm-hmm.
That puts you probably one of the larger employers of this area.
Pretty big. Yes.
Yeah.
The county organization as a whole is one of the largest.
I imagine. Yeah.
So 1,000 employees, and maybe about 400 of those positions are frontline maintenance-driven positions. And of those, I'm thinking like 50% of them have less than 5 years of experience.
Really?
50%.
That's kind of good news too, in a way.
Well, it is, right? Yeah. So we got this young force that's coming up and learning the business.
How about the other 50%?
It sprinkles. A pretty significant component of it's on the back end.
Okay.
50s and 60s are probably about 30%.
So succession of that knowledge. What tactics and strategies are you using?
We are training across the board. We are training and cross-training every opportunity that we can to take the folks that have been around for quite some time and make sure that they're bringing the newbies in.
It sounds like you got willing pupils now too, right? Because you got this young, energetic workforce that wants to learn.
We do.
How are the older folk in training them? Is it rewarding for them too?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think you see that they're happy to share their knowledge. No one's taking the secrets to the grave. They want to share their knowledge. They want to share the exposure and the experience. So it's a good working relationship.
We talked about resiliency and sustainability, but let's get a little more focused on that. Like I said, you're in Hurricane Alley, along with a lot of your tributary or your neighboring communities, right? So this is a common thing throughout the state. But what are some of the? Well, let's start with resiliency and preparing for things like Hurricane Milton. What are the general challenges, and how do you go about just preparing for something like that?
So living in Florida, it's a reality, right? You just end up just having that awareness level that we're going to get one. We're going to get a storm, and we're going to get a lot of wind, we're going to get a lot of rain, and now it seems that we get storm surge as well. This part of the state of Florida tends to be infrequently impacted by the storms. You got a lot of impact in the south part of the state. Usually the Panhandle gets one that comes up through the Gulf.
Yep.
But in the last couple of years, we've been swatted pretty good, and we've had some pretty significant learning lessons. Now we've been training for years and years and years.
Yeah, what is that training like? I mean,
and for me, I think my first memory was probably 2004 when we had a series of hurricanes come through, Charlie and Jean and Francis, and there was another one that came through, all back to back to back.
One after another?
One after the other. Within a month, 6 weeks, we had 4 hurricanes. And they were in various degrees impactful here. Nothing was a direct hit, but it really taught us about loss of electric utility, loss of pump station capability, overflows, those things that maybe we just ignored previously or just didn't have the reason to pay that much attention to it because we thought that we were in a safe spot. The reason I say that is that prior to 2004, we had not had a hurricane in about 30 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's been a long stretch of time, and time is the enemy of
bang.
Time is the emergency. Time is the enemy of emergency preparation. Right. So you forget about the impacts.
A little bit of complacency, maybe.
A little complacency, yeah. So 2004, we really got involved with better preparation. Writing preparation plans, continuity of operations. Those kinds of things, even doing desk tabletop kind of drills. Everybody has
scenario plan. Yeah.
Everybody's got a role. Everybody's got a function. So we started that in earnest, and then it really came to play in 2017 when Hurricane Irma came through. Hurricane Irma came through the east side of the county. A lot of wind, a little bit of rain, but a lot of wind. We lost a lot of electricity, and so that was our first real response opportunity to a big storm. And at that time, it was a lot of pump stations that were down. We were managing how to keep them running, how to keep them operating, how to minimize overflows. Again, going back to stewards of the environment, we spent a lot of money to build pump stations and pipes and plants to keep wastewater in it, not to let it flow on the ground. So we're running around trying to manage this stuff. What we learned was we needed more portable pumping capability. So from 2017, we started buying up annually more and more portable pumping capabilities to be able to manage.
Teams going, get
exactly.
Some,
You take a portable pump, hook it up to a truck, you got a maintenance team, they can run out to a pump station that doesn't have power, they can pump it down, they can manage it that way. In Milton, we lost 75% of the electric grid. 75%.
75?
Yes, and so our service area is about 500.
Does that include your headquarters?
Everything.
So, okay.
So, but we have emergency generators for all of our facilities.
A lot of the community's flying blind at that point.
75% of it.
Yeah.
Most of it, right? So we, thinking for a second, one of the important elements of our operation is we're 500 square miles of service area. We got 900 pump stations, 900 wastewater pump stations. And so 75% of that 700.
That's a lot.
Right?
Wow. Yeah.
So we lost our almost our entire system.
Time is ticking, and you get
So we had an army of staff working really 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for weeks, rotating pumps around, pump one down, pack up, go to the next pump station, pump that one down, pack up and go to the next one. And as a side note, one of the interesting features is we never lost water delivery to our customers.
That's what I was going to ask, because people can't turn their lights on, but they can drink water.
You had water.
You got water.
You had water.
That's your biggest fear in an emergency is you don't have water.
You don't have water, right?
Yeah.
So go out, buy bottled water. Bottled water flew off the shelves in the grocery stores. There was,
And you provided
in the meantime,
service. Wow.
we never lost service to our customers. The consequence of that is if your lights weren't on, but you had water, you're probably doing dishes and taking a shower and doing something, and water's going to a pump station that doesn't have power.
That's right, because it's one water, right?
One water,
it's
right?
going somewhere.
It's one water.
Yeah.
So we had to do some public service announcements to talk about minimizing water use for that very reason. And that was somewhat successful. It's interesting what people will choose to read and what they'll interpret. They thought the water was bad. Don't use the water because it's bad. No, don't use the water because it's got nowhere to go.
Because we don't want to have to treat it when we have all these challenges.
Exactly right.
Perfect. It sounded like, I always use the term hierarchy of service when you're in an emergency like that. Because up in the Midwest and Northeast, where I've done a lot of my career, operators have to make choices when things are happening, right? So if you're prioritizing an overflow over plant service, that could create a problem, right? You could flood out the plant to try and prevent an overflow.
Right.
So we had to develop this hierarchy of service to give them guidance on what to do as you're doing emergency response. And that is a small level compared to what you're talking about with something like a Hurricane Milton. So did you have something similar to that, like a hierarchy of priority or whatever you want to call it? Because it sounded like you're doing the hit teams or putting the pump stations on.
There was
you're trying to keep water service, right? That's got to be a priority.
There was some discussion. So we had local, coastal areas, coastal neighborhoods along the bay that had a 5, 6, 7 foot tidal surge. And so they were underwater. Yeah. And we had discussed turning our drinking water system off in certain areas. But at the end of the day, we decided, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to turn it off because if there's any comfort that anybody's going to have, it's going to be that they've got drinking water. So we maintain
psychologically, that's huge.
Psychologically, yeah. So in terms of any kind of hierarchy, we did, all things considered, we did a fabulous response for limiting overflows. There were other communities and other utilities that didn't fare so well. Tens of millions of gallons of water lost, wastewater lost into the bay, but we didn't suffer that. So we did really
proud of
well.
that.
Oh, very proud.
You gotta be proud.
Team did a great job.
In a growing community, which the challenges get worse every year. Right.
They do.
The other thing that I was a little not surprised, but like I said, in the Midwest, in the towns I grew up, a lot of the growth around the community was extending sewer service lines and water to the communities that were growing around the main town. But septic systems were not non-existent, but relatively rare. It sounds like you've got some significant septic to sewer programs going on.
We do.
Which is another challenge, right?
Yeah, so that's a whole other level, right?
That.
And so interestingly enough, a lot of these septic tank communities are located in low-lying areas around the bay. And so those systems are extremely vulnerable to high water table. They're, to standing water on them, obviously. They're not going to drain. And then we get into the whole consequence of, environmental damage with nutrient loading and everything else. Yeah. So Hillsborough County has believe it or not, has over 122,000 registered septic tanks in the entire county. That's City of Tampa. It's our portion of the service area. Outside of our service area, Plant City is our other city, and Temple Terrace. Within our controlled service area, it's about 26,000.
That's a lot.
And it is a lot. And so
is your goal to ultimately
all of them.
All of them?
Convert all of them. So we've already cataloged all the neighborhoods that have septic systems. We've got them prioritized. We used a scoring system to kind of look at what would be the first, what's the best low-hanging fruit to go pick first. Where's you going to get the biggest bang for the buck? They're expensive to convert. Yeah. Right. And so they were expensive 5 years ago. They're twice as expensive today. We were fortunate to receive a number of grants that really kick-started our program. We started the program 5 years ago, really kicked it off about 2 or 3 years ago. We have 4 communities that total about 6,000 septic tanks that we should be able to convert in the next couple of years. Wow. That'll be the first entry into the whole-scale conversion.
You're baking all that into the capacity needs of growth in the future. Wow. Like I said, 2 Irish guys, we could be sitting here talking all day long, right?
It's good stuff.
I know you're a busy guy, and we're kind of coming towards the end. So if you could give some advice to other communities that are either have growth challenges like you do, or they're growing. There's a growing capital or whatever. Geez, what kind of advice would you give other, after you're 40-some years in this game like me, right?
Yeah.
What kind of advice would you give to other utility authorities and just other people in general that want to see the value of what a water provider really does, right?
My advice to anybody right now is don't be afraid of taking on a new challenge. Don't let the fear of the fact that you haven't done it before keep you from taking that opportunity and leveraging it for your customers. I mean, I think that's super important.
Well, that's basic, right? I mean, it's great. Yeah. And you probably instill that upon the people that they're working for.
Right, trying to.
Well, this was a lot of fun, George. I'm glad I met you. And
it's been a pleasure, Tim.
Thanks for being a guest on Innovation Alley. Hopefully we can talk again.
Yeah, look forward to it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Take care.